The Challenger. Deep is not the deepest point of the ocean. The Challenger Deep is the deepest point of our planet. 6.8 miles below the ground we walk on, and nearly completely desolate. A true marvel of the Earth, and a miraculous piece of geography. Up. Until recently, most scientists believed that the Challenger Deep was the deepest point of our Earth. Keyword: recently. I work for the NOAA, or National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, as a submersible pilot. I've been on countless dives and seen countless things. It is an amazing job, one that I can't imagine ever not taking. If there is one place to appreciate nature and life as we know it, it's the ocean. Yet the vastness of the ocean is a horrifying concept. We are slow in the water, and in the parts of the ocean where you can't see anything below you, it is hard to shake the thought of some massive marine predator snatching you up in its jaws. Despite this, our research knows no bounds, and around a month ago, my team made a massive discovery. A shift in the tectonic plates showed us that in the cracks of the Challenger Deep, there was something below it, an entirely unexplored and unknown region of our world. The team was ecstatic, and negotiations for a press release were immediately brought to our supervisor. Unfortunately, he decided not to go ahead with the news just yet. According to him, after talks with the heads of the NOAA, they wanted us to go on an expedition to see what was there, and then showcase our findings to the world. I wasn't pleased with this, but I knew that it would make a better headline in the news if we actually found stuff down there. As one of the most experienced submersible pilots, I was chosen to head the mission. It would be a solo mission, one that, in my supervisor's words, would change the way we saw the ocean forever. So, after a ton of preparations and warnings and papers, my submersible was hovering over the water, my legs pointed directly at the opening to this new, deeper subsection of Earth's crust. My submersible, named Apollo by me, was reinforced heavily, with intense fortifications and the best titanium money could buy. She was a beautiful thing, one that I could never see myself as worthy of piloting, yet with one swift motion I was dropped into sea. I won't bore you with the details of the descent, as nothing out of the ordinary occurred. I saw numerous creatures, critters and otherwise, but nothing there was something I hadn't seen before. Aside from a sperm whale swimming above me that made me nearly shit myself. After roughly 3 hours, I had finally hit the Challenger Deep. Admittedly, I was a little scared. Despite my numerous adventures into the bowels of deep blue, I had never actually been here at the bottom. It was empty. Not a speck of life besides maybe some bacteria. If loneliness could have a textbook definition, it would be this. Dark, cold, and desolate. The fact anything could live down here whatsoever was unbelievable. Move forward. My intercom sprung to life, jolting me out of my complete awe. I had completely forgotten why I was here, trapped in the sheer complexity of the nothingness of this place. I complied, moving Apollo upwards a bit. And that's when I saw it. A massive gash in the seafloor, stretching for what could have been miles. It was wide too, almost the entire width of a school bus. This wasn't what was shown in our scannings, with the gap being smaller and less wide. Whatever we had seen before, it had expanded. I reported this to my supervisor, who shared the same mild perturbance that I did. Maybe another shift occurred here recently. Maybe. His lackluster answer to my report did not inspire confidence, but I had to keep going. I'm about to enter the opening, I said with a very obvious amount of uncertainty in my voice. Go ahead. Good luck, man. My supervisor responded. And with that, I entered the new deepest point of our Earth. The opening was normal in nature, with nothing but rock and earth surrounding my descent for the first 20 meters or so. However, after this, it all became dark again. There was no more wall, no more gash. I checked my sonar and my mouth dropped to the floor in sheer amazement. I was inside a gigantic cave, nearly 1 mile in diameter. I was at a loss of words, my thoughts taking over where my mouth couldn't. My mind began to race with intense ideas and fears and terrors unveiling themselves. What could be down here? Is it dangerous? Will I die? Etc. I reported my findings to my supervisor, who was, just like me, completely starstruck. Are you sure that's what you see? My supervisor sputtered out. Yes. This submarine had been equipped with all the latest technology, and one of those was a radar just in case anything like a whale or other large creature happened to be approaching me. This radar never failed, but it hadn't sprung to life in hours due to the lack of anything big at this depth, yet it was suddenly firing off. I moved to look at it, and to my both amazement and terror, 5 large blips were moving towards me. I tried to keep myself together, desperately breathing in and out in a pathetic attempt to keep myself from hyperventilating. But it wasn't working. Nothing of this size should be down at this depth. My mind began to picture beasts, monsters, and ravenous creatures coming to rip me apart. In my nervous state, I hadn't realized my supervisor had been trying to talk to me. After nearly tripping over myself, I clumsily reopened the line. "Why have you stopped? What is it?" My supervisor sternly yet curiously asked. "There's 5... something moving towards me, sir. I have no idea what they are." I stammered out, my voice shaky and completely broken by the fear that gripped my throat. "Wait, are you serious? How big are they?" my supervisor asked. I checked the blips. They were 5 seconds from my position. They weren't massive, but they were still too big for this environment. A solid 7 to 9 feet in length. Roughly 8 feet. Just then, I felt a strong, hard, and intense hit come from the outside. Not like something was trying to break in, but rather like something had bumped into Apollo. I checked the 3D cameras, checking the side at which I felt the collision. I caught a glimpse of a tail floating off into the darkness. It looked rigid and crustacean-like, shaped almost like an ace of spades. As I tried to make sense of it, another bump came from above. Whatever these things were, they were strong. Not strong enough to break through titanium, but strong enough to move the vessel a solid foot. I checked the cameras again, this time seeing a pair of legs. They looked like they came from some sort of insect, akin to the legs of a spider, but thicker and with barbs. Once again it floated into the darkness. Once again a hit came, this time targeting the pilot's chamber, scaring the piss out of me. I didn't need to check the cameras. The thing hit my window, and it didn't move from my view. I was completely stuck, entranced by what could only be described as a miracle of nature. A living fossil, floating in front of me, locking its round, pure black eyes with me, practically hypnotizing me to admire its sheer beauty, was a massive, yellowish-tan prehistoric creature, a eurypterid, commonly known by paleontologists and biologists as a sea scorpion. I was dumbfounded. Sea scorpions had gone extinct over 250 million years ago when the Great Dying happened, otherwise known as the Permian extinction event. Eurypterids were completely wiped out by this, so I was at a loss of words. No words could ever describe what I was feeling. I think it was admiring me back. It surely hadn't seen humans before. It tilted its insecty head at me, wondering what I was. Suddenly, more of them came to the window, dumbfounded at what they were seeing. Baby sea scorpions sat atop what I assumed was their mothers, analyzing and internalizing what I was. I began taking photographs of the sea scorpions and sent them to my supervisor. He beamed back to me on the intercom as the cheers of my colleagues rang out in the background. "This is an amazing find. Do you see anything else?" "Not right now, but I'll update you if I do." As I resigned from the intercom once again, the sea scorpions continued to look at me. They almost seemed to gawk at me, as I did the same to them. Suddenly, the all-cleared and a much larger, older-looking one got up to the glass. My submersible had arms. Grabbers used to move away debris and rocks, minerals. It moved its shelled body to the arms, rubbing up against it, before lowering its head to show me a large parasite that had binded to it. I was confused as to what it was incentivizing, until finally I understood that it wanted me to remove the thing. The arms were not surgical, but fortunately this parasite was big, meaning the arms could hopefully remove it. I knew it was risky, and if I accidentally killed it, I could be in massive trouble. However, somewhere deep within me, I knew it was desperate. So as carefully as I could, I maneuvered the arms to reach the critter. It was very much like piloting a claw machine, with every movement a stressor on my psyche. Finally, I had a good grip on the parasite, with the other arm holding the elder. Sea scorpion's head steady, and with one good tug, the little shit came right off. The sea scorpion jolted, shaking its head in what I could only assume was pain. Yet, once the pain subsided, it looked happy, spinning in place with an upbeat pattern. It got back up to the window, and with a happy, almost animal-like bunt against Apollo, it descended back into the depths, with the rest of its family unit following it. With that experience over, I descended, further my mind straight and my heart beating with just a little more pride. I reported the encounter with my staff, who, when shown photos, absolutely thrilled. Fortunately, my supervisor was happy with me and green-lighted the further descent. The sonar continued to prove my suspicion, with the cave proving to be a worthwhile endeavor for the entire NOAA. Eventually, I reached the middle of the cave, when the radar came back to life. Something was approaching the ship again, something absolutely gigantic. It must have been at least 60 feet in length. Now, I was someone who generally despised people who promoted the idea of megalodon living in the trench. However, seeing the radar blip with a massive white dot, You can't blame me for being scared shitless of whatever was approaching. I had already seen a literal living fossil, and I wasn't against the idea of a massive monster being down here anymore. However, my fears were calmed as I realized how slow it was moving. Hell, it might as well have been sitting still. I entered the intercom again to my supervisor, who told me to move towards it. Despite my fears, curiosity got the best of me, and I moved towards the blip. In the darkness, I couldn't see a damn thing, so I began to brace myself for a collision just in case, but I never reached it. Not before it let out a deep, loud, and inundating shockwave of noise. It sounded like a whale's call, but significantly louder and with more bass. My head rung from the sound, my heart nearly exploding out of sheer terror and anxiety. Suddenly, the lights came face to face with the source of the noise. Thinking back on it now, humans really are tiny in comparison to some things. We are the apex predator, but we definitely aren't the top dogs in some areas. Size is definitely one of them. In front of Apollo was a gigantic fish, bony and large. Its head looked like it was made exclusively from bone, armored and rigid. The rest of its figure slowly came into view, its large body unveiling itself to the light. Another living fossil. A large, healthy and majestic fish. Leadsichthys. The behemoth paid me no mind, its gargantuan body regarding me with no more than what felt like a simple look. Of course, I began taking photos and sent them to my supervisor. The intercom shot to life again, and the ovation of my peers could be heard once more. Eventually, its large, scaly torso moved into the darkness, never to be seen again. I was given the green light to go further down, but I realized after 3 seconds of descent that I finally reached the bottom. It was different than the Challenger Deep. It was gray in color with little to no sand on its surface. Jagged scars permeated from its surface, scattered across a variety of areas. What was interesting was that the bottom felt soft, almost like it was a cushion rather than rock. I began talking to my supervisor, discussing what the next move was. He wanted to explore the place further, to see if any other living fossils existed down here. I couldn't blame him. Everything we knew about the ocean and its inhabitants had been flipped on its head. It was amazing. As I began to move forward, something odd happened. The ground beneath me began to vibrate a bit. At first I attributed it to shifting plates, but then, out of nowhere, the ground moved completely, nearly knocking over Apollo. Suddenly, the radar blipped a dot out, but it wasn't a dot at all. The white blip I would have usually seen encompassed almost the entire radar circle, as if the entire area around me was a living organism. I then did a sonar scan, and saw what my mind had been trying to suppress ever since the radar did what it did. What could only be described as a leviathan was moving, and this movement was occurring right beneath me. What I had landed on wasn't ground. It was a living thing, and I had just woke it up. In my panic, I tried to turn on the intercom, but it wouldn't even go. The station I had been using to communicate with my team had been taken completely off the system, so I did the only other thing left. Get the hell out. I began piloting the submersible out of Dodge, moving it as fast as it could go. Suddenly, Apollo stopped completely. Her engine was on, but she wouldn't budge. I checked the sonar, and I wasn't stuck on anything. It simply wouldn't budge. The intercom then came on, but my supervisor's voice was replaced by a loud, yellowing, and deep voice. No, stay. I was completely frozen, my mind a jumble of fear, shock, and confusion. Was it talking to me? I slowly shot the intercom back on. Who are you? I stammered out, my voice a complete mess of sounds and obvious nervousness. The creature bellowed back, its voice calm yet commanding. I am not a who. Even if I were, it does not matter. My mind began jumbling thoughts, many associated with how on earth this thing was speaking English, or for that matter, speaking at all. Why are you here? How did you find this place? I responded, truthfully, I am a marine explorer. A shift in Earth's sea crust opened up a hole beyond what we thought was the deepest point of Earth. I was tasked with going in. I couldn't see it, and thank God I couldn't. It probably would have given me a heart attack, but I could tell it was thinking of what to say. Are you here to harm or to heal? I was scared to answer, but I had helped that sea scorpion earlier. I thought that if what I believed was my life being on the line, telling this deep-sea monster I had helped it would be useful. Earlier, I encountered some eurypterids. I helped this elder one with a parasite. It took my words and responded back, thank you. In the calming nature of its voice, I eased slightly, my mind gaining some clarity to ask it further questions. What is this place, I asked? The creature didn't respond for a while, but after what felt like eons, it finally spoke up. Many, many years ago, long before your species ever walked this planet, Species of different eras managed to survive their respective calamities. The Eurypterids, as you call them, were not suited for their new world. So I called upon them to descend to this cavern, instilling them with an increased strength and tolerance for the conditions here. As time passed, more water-dwelling creatures came, and they now reside here. I am the guardian of this place, my purpose solely to defend and protect the nature here. I was at a loss of words. This thing, whatever it was inherently some sort of underwater deity. I couldn't even begin to wrap my head around the concept before it spoke through the intercom again. You shouldn't be here. I snapped out of my thoughts, and upon hearing this, I became more confused than ever. I guess it could understand what I was thinking, because it fired up the intercom again. You and your congregation are benevolent, but the rest of your kind is not. They pillage, loot, and destroy the ecosystem above. Many recent underwater creatures have come here, and they speak of you and your species' mayhem. I will seal this, whole again, and you are to never return here. Do not tell any of your kind of my existence and leave with the knowledge you have now, but no more. I understood. It was right, unfortunately. I see, I muttered. The beast did not speak through the intercom this time, only making an incomprehensibly loud bellow that, if anywhere else, could have most likely took down a whole city through decibels alone. Before I began to comply and go ahead and ascend, one more question entered my mind. How did you end up here? The intercom stayed silent for the longest time before it echoed to life for the last time of my journey. Some secrets are best left secrets. A part of me was slightly annoyed at this, but I understood, and so I began my ascent. After resurfacing, my colleagues bombarded me with questions, demanding to know why I had basically gone off the grid. My supervisor was majorly pissed, but at the end of the day, none of it mattered. The next day, in the dead of night, I went back to my post on the station to see if the hole had closed, and sure enough, it did. I don't think I'll ever forget my experiences in the deep, and to be frank, who could? It was a jarring experience, and one that I think I'll never be able to truly comprehend. The media couldn't get it either, as the images of modern-day prehistoric monsters have swept through the internet like wildfire, with every site on the web talking about how interesting this truly is. If another crack forms or Earth cuts open again and we find another one of these, however, I will not go back, for I still don't know what it was, and I don't want to find out. A woman entered our police station at 3:23 a.m. and begged to be arrested. What crime have you committed? I asked. None, she choked out, lungs recovering from her dash into the station. I frowned from behind the counter, readying myself for one of those nights, but it would be like no other night of my life. Then why should I arrest you, ma'am? The squirrely woman, catching her breath with hands against her knees, cranked her neck backwards so sharply that the joint popped. Because, she said, taking a big inhale, we're all in danger. Then her eyes began to ping frenetically between the station's entrance and me. I leant my elbows a little more deeply into the counter, pushing forwards to take a better peek at the building's automatic doors. There was nothing beyond the glass panes but the black of night and tarmac and silhouetted trees. Is somebody following you? I asked. She shook her bobble head, making her neck pop another couple of times. I winced a little at the woman's frailty. She was slinging her skull around so violently that I started to wonder whether she wanted to launch it free. Pitch the damn thing for 6. No, I'm just checking, she whispered, coming closer. That we're alone. Now, I'm an officer of the law. I've faced men and women with twice and thrice the stature of this meek, frightened woman, so I don't know quite how to explain how or why I felt such terror in that moment. I was chilled by the woman's breath, or the words carried on it. There are 3 other officers at the station tonight, I croaked before clearing my throat. We're not alone. Will those doors count? She asked, shivering as she eyed the glass entrance again. Count in what way? I replied. I need the smallest indoor space possible, she said. He told me that I won't be able to exit a room or a building or a prison without spoken approval. He said I'd need permission to leave. Who told you that? I asked, befuddled. I don't understand, ma'am. Explain what's happening. Do I have to do something criminal? The woman asked, shuddering. You won't just arrest me? That's generally how it works, I replied. I'm just a little concerned about why you want to be locked away this evening. Well, morning. I assume it has something to do with keeping yourself safe by getting off the street, given that you say you're in danger. However, jail cells aren't hotel rooms, so I don't need to protect myself, she interjected with a hiss, wild eyes locking onto mine. I need to protect all of you. What's happening out here, Thatcher? Officer Bowen asked as she emerged from the office behind me. I tried my damnedest not to gulp, but the unnerving woman was making it difficult for me. This lady is asking to be arrested, but she says she hasn't committed a crime. Officer. Bowen offered me a raised eyebrow, then put her hands on her hips as she looked at the woman. What's your name, love? Tamsin, she said. Please will one of you lock me up? I need to be locked up. Something bad's about to happen. What's about to happen, Tamsin? Asked Officer Bowen. I don't know. The A. Woman blubbered, placing her face in her hands. It's inside me. Something about those words and her tone of voice instilled me with fear beyond anything words could describe. For it was a fear not of this world. Officer Bowen, on the other hand, seemed unamused. She leant towards my ear and whispered, I think we need to get this lady some psychiatric help. She might be in danger, I whispered back as Tamsin continued to cry. She might be, Officer Bowen agreed. But that's for a healthcare professional to decide, don't you think? Not two police officers at 3 o'clock in the morning. I nodded, then spoke louder. Tamsin, I'm going to leave you with Officer Bowen for a second whilst I make a call in the office, okay? Tamsin shot her head up from her hands as I rose from the swivel chair. No, please, just arrest me. There isn't time for any of this. I need you to relax, Tamsin, Bowen said as I started to walk towards the office. We're going to help you, okay? We're going to figure out what's happening. Together. I shut the office door behind me, then made the call. The idea was to avoid potentially upsetting or aggravating the distressed civilian. Bowen and I had no idea how she would react to the arrival of a mental health specialist, so it seemed best to keep that information to ourselves. The office overlooked the main entrance through a horizontal one-way window, so I watched Bowen and Tamsin talk whilst the phone rang. And when I made it through to a specialist, I explained the whole situation to her. She said that Tamsin was in need of a proper health assessment. I know it's late, I said, so I'm happy to escort her to the hospital. And then came a voice not quite her own. No, we'll escort you all. Before I managed to wrap my head around my unease at her sudden shift in vocal timbre, I clocked Tamsin smiling at me from the other side of the one-way window. She shouldn't have been able to see me, but I knew, somehow, that she could. And that filled me with terror. The grin on her face might have had a thing to do with it too. Then the lights in the station cut out, and that came with a sharper pang of terror. The pain persisted afterwards, leaving me sitting in the dark, phone screen lighting my face with an invisible blade lodged stubbornly between two bars of my ribcage. With the phone in my far from rigid hand, I rushed back out into the darkened area behind the counter, but Officer Bowen wasn't there. And when I shone my phone's torch beyond the counter, Tamsin wasn't there either. Hello? Yelled a voice from down the corridor as fear started to grip me more tightly. A torchlight bounced down a distant corridor beyond the counter, painting the walls in light, offering only a slight reprieve from the suffocating darkness. Then came Officer Harling into the entryway. Oh, Thatcher, thank God someone's here. He sighed, shining the torch beam onto me. Looks like we've had a power cut. There was a woman, I whispered, leaning against the counter, once again, this time for emotional support. I was terrified, and I still wasn't quite sure why. She's gone now. Bowen's gone too, huh? Harling asked, not catching my drift. Gone? I don't know. Where's Rodman? I asked. Harling shrugged. You're the first person I've found. Maybe we should check the fuse box or call. He was interrupted by screaming, the voices of a man and a woman, from deeper within the station. Bowen, I whispered. Rodman, he added. I ran out from behind the counter and joined Officer Harling as we ran down a hallway that led into the heart of the station, desperate to locate the cries of our two fellow officers on the late night shift with us. This is Officer Harling, he panted as we ran down the corridor, requesting backup, power cut at the station, and potential disturbance. Roger, came a garbled voice from the other end of his radio. We burst through double doors and found ourselves in the station's break room. There, we witnessed a horror I will never forget. Officer Bowen and Officer Rodman were both lying on one of the tables, sawn neatly in half a little above each of their pelvic areas. The light of Harling's torch caught the sheen of the blood, and the table's laminated plastic top, and the whites of the victims' eyes. Their mouths hung open in the screams they had unleashed during those final seconds of life. I hoped, and still hope, their deaths were swift and relatively painless, but their expressions told another horrifying story, one that left me paralyzed in fear, vocal cords unable to expel a sound. Harling, on the other hand, screamed and rushed towards our severed officers, dropping his torch to the floor as he ran, plunging us back into darkness. I'd seen something for a moment at the back of the room. Harling, pick the torch up, I begged, rummaging in my pocket for my phone. They're gone. Harling sobbed, no longer the sturdy officer of the law I had known for 5 years, but a weeping mess. Pick it up now, Harling, I insisted. I was a mess too, a jittery, terrified one. It wasn't sturdiness that kept me awake and alert. Wasn't my duty to the law. I need Harling to pick up his torch because we weren't alone in that room. There came the slaps of flesh against the floor, and I hurriedly activated my phones. Torch, Harling was gone. Hello? I wheezed feebly, casting the torch around the room. Whoever's in here, reinforcements are on the way, so... Roger, crackled a distorted voice from some unseen radio. We'll escort you all. My stomach dropped as I realized that Harling's call hadn't made it through to anyone. That voice, inhuman and indistinct, did not belong to anyone or anything that wanted to help. It belonged to the voice I'd heard when I called the mental health care professional. There came more slaps from behind me, only a few, and when I spun my torch around, I expected to find nothing there once again. So I screamed when I saw her. Tamsin. Only, she had changed. She showed only the whites of her eyes, rolling them ever deeper into the back of her head, and her mouth was impossible. It spanned the breadth of her face and then some. It had opened beyond human limits, and to add to that hellishness, it revealed not human teeth, but incisors of obscene length, narrow width. Each tip tapered off, to the finest point which dripped with blood, and even the canines and molars to the sides were unthinkably sharp, unthinkably capable of cleaving a creature neatly down its center. Do you want me to stay, officer? The thing cooed, as if playing with its food. Then it, charged towards me, and I screamed at a volume louder than my lungs were built to accommodate. Screamed as I braced for death. Screamed, no! Time feels a little hazy between that moment, which I expected to be my last, and the moment at which the responding officers found me. They said they'd arrived in 20 minutes, but it may as well have been hours, or perhaps only seconds. But she was gone when they got there and returned power to the building. I was interrogated about the demise of my fellow officers, including the disappearance of Officer Harling, who is a suspect in the case, along with Tamsin, the mystery woman visible on CCTV footage before the blackout. The discrepancy between your story and the truth is curious, said one interviewer. What? Discrepancy? I asked. Well, the power to the building was undoubtedly cut, he explained. Yet the automatic doors were standing open when backup officers arrived at the station. I felt my skin pale. I think my child was swapped for something inhuman. My wife Jennifer died earlier this year. It feels like it happened yesterday, not because of my memory of that day, but because I don't think I have truly lived a day since it happened. It's funny how much can change in a day. The morning had been like any other. Jennifer was feeding our newborn Molly, and I was humming along to the ink spots as I made us a breakfast omelet. Life was perfect. Yet as soon as Jennifer took a ponderous look at her hands and remarked how cold they were, it signified the end to my idyllic life. Hours later, I held one of those cold, lifeless hands as a doctor explained the spread and effect of sepsis. I learned a few hard lessons that day. I don't deal well with pity, I don't deal well with social gatherings, and I don't deal well financially. I hadn't realized how much I had relied on Jennifer for my well-being. Every social occasion felt suffocating, and I quickly realized my low salary as a data analyst was not enough to afford the mortgage payments for our suburban new build. When Jennifer's father threw a lifeline in offering use of his rarely used holiday home in northern Brittany, I gladly accepted. I couldn't wait to leave those pitying looks behind. It was only when me and Molly arrived at the house did I feel the first pang of apprehension. I knew the house was old, maybe 3 or 4 centuries by what Jennifer's father had said, but it looked almost medieval. The roof was sound but concaved like a lens. The chimneys at either side of the building seemed to be desperately clinging onto the main structure. These chimneys led to the only heating sources of the house, 2 grand fireplaces held aloft by large slabs of stone which still bared the pickaxe marks from which it had been chiseled. The upper floor was supported by great beams of oak, although still sturdy. They wore the scars of centuries of woodworm spots. Even after thorough cleaning, the creaky upstairs floorboards would still patter the lower floor with dust when walked upon. Yet for its quirks, I felt almost content. The small village the house was situated in was incredibly quiet, meaning me and Molly were rarely disturbed. One might have guessed by the multitudes of shuttered windows that it was a ghost town, yet the spell would be broken by the hourly bells of the central church, which seemed to act an auditory timetable for the locals who would filter out of their homes to frequent the boulangerie or tabac in their daily rituals. In my brief visits out of the home, I noticed how aged the population was. I couldn't remember ever seeing anyone younger than their 30s. Not that I had much interaction with them, I couldn't even speak French, let alone Breton. And they, always seemed to eye me with caution. Coincidentally, the only English-speaking person in the village was my neighbor. An old lady named Dorian, who looked almost as ancient as the building itself, lived in the house adjacent. Our first interaction had been odd. I'd just returned from the corner shop, Molly strapped to my front and shopping bag in hand, when as I put the keys in the door, I heard the clip-clop of wood on stone. I turned to face an old woman wearing clogs, donning a black and white motel-y dress with a frilly hat to match. Before I had a chance to greet her, she pointed a gnarled finger at Molly and in a thick Breton accent croaked, "Is the baby yours?" "Yes, she is. Her name is Molly," I replied cautiously. I didn't just find her now. I regretted my attempt at joke as Dorian's face furrowed into a stern glare. "This is no place for a child," she said coldly. "This house?" I said, gesturing to the building. "It looks a bit shabby from the outside, but it's actually quite cozy on the inside," and Dorian cut me off by wagging her finger. No, this place is too dangerous for the child. We are too close to the chaos." For a moment I was confused as to what she meant, but then I realized she was referencing the valley that bordered the west side of the village. The Bretons use the word chaos to describe an area of literal primordial geological chaos. The chaos next to the village, like many others in Brittany, is a winding valley filled with immense boulders and strange formations. These great rocks, some being larger than houses, are said to have been tumbled and shifted into place after great calamities. The ancient nature of these valleys has spawned countless myths of spirits and creatures who have roamed these areas. Before the age of man, this mystique, however, had always been lost on me. "I wouldn't worry. I don't think Molly here is going to be wandering near those rocks anytime soon," I said, stroking her head as she began to stir. Dorian only shook her head. "Her mother should be watchful. It's not what wanders in that one should worry, but what wanders out." Before I could query what she meant, Molly began to cry. "Her mother is not with us anymore," I said quickly, feeling a sudden pang of anguish. "I better get in and feed this one. It was nice to meet you." We exchanged names and I made my way inside. As I unpacked my shopping and began mixing up some baby formula, I felt my grief creep back into my psyche. I had been in Brittany 3 months, and I realized I hadn't thought of Jennifer at all this last week. Being so busy with work and taking care of Molly, I realized I hadn't had much time to think. Now I was left alone with my thoughts. I remembered how greatly I missed her. The small things that were absent hurt the most. The way I would catch her in a jumping embrace when she returned from work, the smell of her on my pillows, and the way she would sing Molly asleep. These small things that together form the love for a person. Now all I am left with is a memory. Molly's cries woke me from my mournful trance. "It's okay, Daddy is here," I said softly as I lifted the bottle to her mouth for her to feed. "What am I going to do, Molly?" I whispered as her mother's green eyes peered into mine. I sighed and pulled her closer to me. "At least I'll always have you." As if feeling my torment, Molly giggled and gave me one big toothless smile. I smiled back. "Okay, you little rascal, time for bed. Daddy has some more work to do." I took Molly up to my bedroom to her cot, which was nestled in the corner by the window. "Sleep well, my little angel." I kissed her on the forehead and tucked her in. Downstairs in the sitting room, I kindled a fire, opened up my laptop and returned to my work. I don't know how much time passed until I heard that first bump. I'd been wearing headphones, so I didn't know whether I had misheard at first. Then another, and another. I shot to my feet as I heard Molly begin to wail. I heard what sounded like frantic footsteps echoing from upstairs. "Molly!" I shouted as I began bolting up the staircase and into the bedroom. I had expected something, anything, but as I burst into the room, there was Molly, sound asleep in her cot. Had I imagined it? I stood in confusion as I felt a sudden breeze draft blow through the room. The window next to Molly's bed was slightly ajar. I was sure it hadn't been opened before. A low rumble of thunder emanated from the window. Rain began to patter quietly on the tiled roof. A strange tension filled me. I had never believed in ghosts, but this felt like something that a person who did believe in them would freak out about. Either way, whether it was a ghost or a rat, I suddenly felt very uncomfortable leaving Molly alone in that room. I carefully scooped Molly up from her cot and carried her back downstairs. She stirred as I entered the sitting room, and on sight of the baby milk bottle left on the side, she began incessantly reaching towards it. "Still hungry, are we?" I said to Molly as I laid her in the small crib by the sofa. "Okay, just one more then." I hurried to the kitchen to create another mix. As I re-entered the sitting room, I could see her eyes were locked on the bottle with a strange intensity. "Wow, you really like this stuff, huh?" I reached down to feed her the bottle, but she practically snatched it away from me with dexterity I'd never seen before and began chugging the bottle down. "Whoa, settle down there, sweetie. You'll..." Get a bad tummy. I tried to pull the bottle away, but she had a vice-like grip on the bottle. In sheer disbelief, I watched as the entire bottle's contents disappear in 10 seconds. As soon as she finished, she let out a small burp and threw the bottle from her crib. Jesus Christ, Molly. Where did that come from? I said in shock. I had never seen Molly act such a way, or any baby for a matter of fact. Molly's green eyes locked with mine. Another rumble of thunder permeated through the room. A wave of uncanniness washed over me. Something seemed off. Molly seemed off. I wasn't sure whether it was the strangeness of the evening that had got to me, but the way she looked at me so intently almost unnerved me. As if trying to make use of the sudden attention, Molly began mumbling, Her first word? Molly had never attempted speech like this before. My unease began dissipating as I realized I was about to bear witness to a wonderful moment. What is it, Molly? Daddy is listening, I whispered, worrying any noise would pop this bubble of discovery. Molly mumbled, the words almost breaking free. Yes, Molly? I said in anticipation. More, Molly said with a certain deliberation. A laugh escaped my breath. More? Molly, my angel, you have just had a whole bottle. Molly's brows furrowed as if understanding. More, she repeated with a sterner tone. No, Molly, it's past your bedtime already. You don't need another bottle, I said, the concern creeping back into my voice. More. Now, Molly screamed, as the first crack of lightning illuminated the room. She began flailing around, manically in her crib. For a moment I just sat there in disbelief. Molly was only 10 months old. It wasn't impossible for her to begin speaking at this age, but her comprehension of my words felt just as unnatural as her sudden appetite. Molly also had never had a tantrum like this before. Sure, she had cried and gotten upset, but she had never screamed bloody murder like this before. I conceded. I had tried to get her stopped by speaking to her, gently rocking her, even singing to her, but still she screamed, demanding to be fed. I felt defeated as began mixing her another bottle. Jennifer would have been able to remedy this, I thought to myself, but a rapping at the door broke me from my pitiful trance. It was Dorianne, dressed in a white nightgown and fluffy slippers, which were slowly getting drenched by the intensifying rain. With a stony scowl plastered across her face, spoke to me while incessantly pointing her finger inside. Your child has kept me up this last hour. Oh God, Dorianne. I'm sorry, I spluttered out. It's Molly. I don't know what has gotten into her. She won't stop eating and cry. Dorianne pushed past me before I could finish. Where is she? She demanded. Let me have a look at her. She didn't have to ask. She simply followed the sound of the wailing. I quickly followed, baby bottle in hand. She's never been this food manic before, I said, handing the bottle to Molly, which quickly silenced her screaming. This has just begun tonight? Dorianne said, concern beginning to show in her face. Yes, and she even spoke her first words, only to ask for more food, I said, as Molly began to polish off the last of the bottle. Dorianne just shook her head. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, she began, then paused. Dorianne took one look at Molly discarding her third bottle, and then looked up at me. This is not your child, she said plainly. What the hell are you talking about? I said in astonishment. Children are rare here. They are sought after, craved by things often not human. Dorianne leaned down and picked up Molly, who had begun to cry again. This is Jetton handiwork. I know many mothers who notice too late or refuse to accept. Months go by, food depletes, yet the baby has not grown. She looked down at Molly, who had begun to properly wail again. She'll be deep within. The chaos now, I did try to warn you, she sighed. A sudden anger had begun to well in me. That is my child you are holding. I don't know this Jetton, and I don't like how you refer to her. Give her back to me. I outstretched my arms expectantly. You don't believe me? Dorianne chortled. Look, I'll show you. She suddenly began squeezing her thumb hard on Molly's temple. She began to scream even louder. I returned that scream and lunged towards her, but before I could reach her, I heard the audible pop of Molly's eye leaving her skull. Yet what dropped to the floor wasn't flesh. It bounced and rolled to my feet like a marble. In a moment where time seemed to freeze, I picked it up. It was a perfect porcelain eye, carved and etched, better than any prosthetic I had ever seen. I looked up to see a single-eyed Molly, her skin coating the inside of her socket like some badly treated doll. My stomach rolled over inside of me. What the hell is that thing? Speaking aloud what I was thinking. A changeling, a very deceiving fake, and a cruel imitation of life. Dorian began indifferently as Molly began to flail against her. They are the creation of Jetton, foul and imperfect creatures who have only prevented the degeneration of their race through claiming the beautiful and whole. My mind began to race. The madness of the situation and the screams of Molly, or rather the changeling, had starting to make my head throb. So where is the real Molly? I asked desperately. They'll have taken her to the caves under the chaos, Dorian said calmly as another lightning strike lit up her dark eyes. If you leave now, you might be able to get her before she's claimed. You'll need to bring this, she said, dangling the changeling in front of her. Even though I knew it wasn't human, my paternal instinct made me spring to grab the one-eyed baby and cradle it under my arm. What am I supposed to do with her? I asked, slightly unsettled by her handling of the child. You'll use her. To bargain. They'll only reveal themselves to you that way. Your child will be of value to them, but not more than the tool they use to acquire her. These things require a lot to craft. She gestured to the door. Leave now. Go the deepest level of the chaos. If she's still alive, you'll hear her cries to guide your way. I hope you have more luck than I did. With so much information to process and so little time, all I could utter to her was thank you as I grabbed my coat and ran out into the storm. It was raining hard. The changeling cried incessantly. Even with my knowledge, I instinctively tried to shield it from the rain the best I could. The lights flicked on in some of the houses I ran past as I held the screaming child, and as the street lights dissipated and the chaos unfolded in front of me. The only source of light would come from the inconsistent flashes of lightning that would illuminate the stone Goliaths I desperately clambered over. I was wading through the river of rock, less than 5 minutes before I heard the first cries faint and whistled through the wind. I heard her. My baby girl. I quickened my pace in complete disregard for the unknown drops nestled between boulders. I leapt from rock to rock, clutching the imposter closely to my chest. Then I found it. A circular clearing which at its center held 3 great boulders, fallen into place to give the appearance of a great stone doorway leading into a black, endless abyss. A single cry echoed from the void. Molly! I shouted, but only thunder answered my call. I wish I brought a flashlight or a lighter, anything that would have let me see into that dark cavern. I had no way of seeing how deep or far it went. I didn't want to risk a fall unless there was no other option. I had to try as Dorian said. I have your child, I called out to the abyss, and I know you have mine. No response. I want to trade. I return what is yours and you return what is mine, I shouted. I could feel the desperation creeping into my voice. Again, I heard Molly's cries echo out from the dark. I laid the changeling out on the stone, its porcelain. I glistened in the moonlight. I realized I had no other option. I grabbed a loose stone and raised it above my head. I'll kill it. I'll kill your creation if you don't bring me mine, I screamed in a sickening primal selfishness. It sickened me because I suddenly knew I would. If I couldn't have Molly, then they couldn't have this thing. A sudden guttural screech emanated from the darkness, an inhuman metallic scream that sounded like 100 forks being dragged across a chalkboard. I'll do it, you fucking bastards, I yelled. The screams and cries of Molly from the cave seemed to sync with the abomination below me. I'm going to give you till the count of 3, I said, my grip tightening on the rock. 1. Another hellish howl breaks from the dark. 2. The changeling looks up in a moment of terror. 3. A great crash of lightning strikes into a tree mere meters from where I was standing, blinding me with a light of sheer white for just a moment. As my vision clears, the rock still held aloft. I looked down into 2 green beady eyes. I immediately cast the rock aside and scooped Molly up into my arms. I don't know how long I sat there, quietly sobbing and whispering sweet comforts into Molly's ears, but as the rain began to soak through my outer layers, I got up and made my way home. I don't remember getting home at all, nor going to bed. All I remember is waking up on my sofa, and Molly cradled in my arms. There were a few dying embers left in the fireplace. I could see the morning sun creeping through the gaps of my window shutters. For a brief, comforting moment, I thought, I had just experienced the most terrible of dreams. However, this spell was shortly broken, as when I glanced to my table, a single porcelain eye stared back at me. The night I planned to kill my husband, things went terribly, terribly wrong. The kids and I are still on the run. Please send help. I heard a faint beep and the click of a keycard registering at the lock. I figured they must have had a hell of a time. Their laughter reverberated down the hall long before they arrived at the room. The woman sauntered in, giggling, kicked off her heels, then strode across the low-pile carpet and opened the mini-fridge. I heard the shrill squeak of styrofoam when she placed it inside, probably leftovers from dinner. It smelled like Mexican. Enchiladas, maybe, or chile relleno. That was Tom's favorite, the bastard. I watched their feet move closer until they were standing in front of one another. Tom's size 13s were still on. Fucking clown shoes. The woman rose to her tippy toes and I could hear their lips smacking against one another's. Heat rose in my face to the point I thought my head might pop like one of those cartoon thermometers. I reached for the kitchen knife I had brought from home and held it over my heart, hands trembling. This was it. This was my moment. I tried moving my legs and arms, stretching, preparing for the physical undertaking ahead. Tom was a big guy. If I didn't do this exactly as planned, precisely as I had practiced, things would go south for me. Fast. My joints ached as I moved them back and forth. I had been hiding beneath this god-forsaken bed for hours. Clothes rained onto the floor where in my head I had planned to slide out and pounce on him, plunging my blade through his thick neck. The woman's feet levitated from the floor and then disappeared. She giggled more, the tramp. Then the bed caved to the point of just grazing the tip of my nose when he threw her on top of it. Tom's feet disappeared one by one as he mounted the mattress. I noticed the heat had left my face. I was so angry a moment ago. But I noticed now I was feeling something different. My vision blurred, and tears ran down both sides of my face as the bed creaked above me. I left the knife on my chest and wiped my tears away. I hated myself for crying. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was the bastard that was supposed to pay today. Pay for the countless nights of phony meetings just too far out of town to come home for the night. This scenario had played out in my head countless times. I knew where to stick the knife, the precise angle, what I would say to the bitch as she ran screaming out the door, mascara running and tits flopping down the hall, pleading for housekeeping to save her life. And I knew this would be the end of the line for me. He would be dead, and I would go to prison, finally free of his lies. The tears were unstoppable now. I thought about Ryan and Hannah and what this would do to them. I told myself they would be fine. My sister would take them in. She was strong. She didn't let men walk all over her, lie to her, treat her like a used sack. She had a good husband. They would care for the kids. Plus, they were nearly through high school. They had their own lives now. They didn't need me anymore, and they surely didn't need their lying father. I grabbed the knife from my chest and gripped it tight as I could. If I wanted to do this right, I couldn't let this knife get out of my hands. But the knife shook so much I could hardly maintain my grip. I dropped it on the floor beside me and the handle thudded against the carpet. I froze, wondering if they might have heard, but the bed kept on swaying and creaking. I felt around for the knife at my side, and once I got my hand on it, I couldn't pick it up. The sanity pan in my mind's balance scale plummeted, and I realized I didn't recognize the woman I had become. Was I really going to go through with this? Was I going to throw my life away for this piece of shit? I cupped my hands over my mouth to stifle the cries beckoning at my quivering lips. This wasn't me. I'm no murderer. I'm a mother. I was head of the PTA, for God's sake. My mind did a complete backflip and I began brainstorming how I could most quickly get out of this shitty hotel room. Finally, all the weight of the past few weeks, all the preparation, all the espionage, and thinking I would grow old in prison, it all drifted away. The woman began panting heavily, then screamed passionately, "Fuck, I should not be hearing this. Why did I do this to myself?" Suddenly, she stopped mid-scream. Guttural smacks and clicks came from deep within her throat, and the smooth sway of the bed was replaced by feverish shaking and thumping on the mattress. I tried to process what could be happening to her. Was she having a heart attack? No, Tom. Wasn't that good, the bastard? Finally, the shaking stopped. The room fell quiet and I could hear my blood pumping, so loud I feared they might hear it too. The bed shifted as someone slid across. Then the woman's body flopped to the floor. She laid next to me, staring wide-eyed. The silhouette of fat, purple fingers painted her neck. Something I had never thought about before was that death could look fresh. Although she wasn't breathing, there was a faint light still living somewhere within her. I imagined if someone resuscitated her quick, she might make it. Two bare size 13s pounded the floor on either side of her body, and I recoiled, my brain finally catching up with the events. Tom dropped to his knees, and for a moment I thought he might bend all the way down and crane his head beneath the bed to say hello, but he didn't. He knocked the woman's clutch from the nightstand onto the floor, sending its contents flying. Tom grabbed a tube of lipstick. He pinched the woman's chin between his fingers, puckering her lips, and delicately applied the bright red lipstick with perfect precision. He then tidied up her eyeshadow, wiping a wayward smudge from the side of her face with his pinky. Then Tom stood and grabbed her by the ankles. I watched as her body slid across the floor and into the bathroom. A captive audience to this one-man show that I feared may have been a rerun. I swear her dead eyes somehow never left mine, locked on like she was still somewhere in there. begging for me to jump in with my kitchen knife and carry out my plan. Then the bathroom door slammed shut. Maybe I should run, I thought, now, straight out the door. But what if he returned right as I slid out from under the bed? I didn't want to end up like her. Then I thought about Ryan and Hannah. They don't know what he is. Shit, I don't know what he is. He could hurt them too. But he wouldn't. Would he? I let out a deep breath and resolved to stay put. I would wait until morning if I had to. Until he left to dispose of the body. Whatever he did, whatever else I saw here in this room tonight, I had to wait it out. I had to get home to my babies. Does anyone else have a frightening story of the doorway effect? The doorway effect is that commonplace daily phenomenon of walking through a doorway and forgetting whatever you were thinking moments earlier. On a neurological level, the explanation for this effect is that our minds compartmentalize thoughts. So passing over a threshold from one room to another can, from time to time, expunge one's short-term memory. Ever meandered around a room, not remembering why you originally entered? That'll have been the doorway effect. It's a psychological quirk, faulty wiring in the brain, a dotty, divvy, screwy, loopy moment, a neural refresh that happens upon updating one's physical location to somewhere new. And that sudden scatterbrained forgetfulness tends to make people chuckle. Is that always the case, though? You see, I've been experiencing this effect a lot lately, and always with the same door. Whenever I stroll from the kitchen to the main hallway, my mind entirely erases. I forget whatever I've just been thinking. Forget whatever I've just experienced in that room. That's frightening enough in itself, but something far worse happened after my last bout of short-term memory loss. Something that terrified me into fleeing my home. Shall we play a board game then? I asked my friend Dale as I returned to the living room, head feeling cloudy. He raised an eyebrow and smiled. Sure, but what about that cupcake, May? I hate to sound rude. Cupcake? I replied. He nodded. Yeah, you and Jem were bragging about them. Your birthday cupcakes? Are you pretending to forget so you don't have to share them, Miss Greedy? I blushed a little. Not again, I thought. Why do I keep forgetting what happens in there? Right, yeah. Sorry, I got distracted, I stammered, knowing full well what had happened. For the past month, I haven't remembered a thing. That has happened in my kitchen. I'll come out with a plate of dinner in my hands, so I know I've been in there. But I didn't have the foggiest clue what else had happened in there. I do now. Is she still in there? Asked Dale. Then he called out, Hey Jem, fetch me a cupcake. What's taking her so long? I gulped and twisted my head to face the doorway to the kitchen. From that angle in the lounge, I could see only a sliver of the room, counters along, the two perpendicular walls meeting in the corner. Light spilt from the garden into that little cranny, but it failed to ricochet from the surfaces it bumped. It was as if a darkness were hanging heavily over the space. Jem! Dale called, again before chuckling. Is she deaf? I shrugged, hovering on my feet between the sofas and the doorway to the kitchen. That doorway which, until a few weeks earlier, had been just that, a threshold between rooms. Suddenly, I embraced the horror that I had been desperately trying to suppress. It was a threshold to something else, something I was forgetting. May, Dale began uncertainly. Is Jem even in there? I saw the two of you walk through there only 2 minutes ago. Am I losing my mind? I opened my lips to speak, but nothing came out. That, along with my face likely turning ever whiter, must have pushed Dale from curious to anxious. What's wrong, May? He asked, rising from the settee. Why are you being so weird? Jem! My friend continued to call out for her as he brushed past me. Please don't go in there, I pleaded with a croak, but Dale ignored me and entered the kitchen. His shoes scuffed and brushed lightly against the tiles of the room, then slid to a sudden stop, and he screamed. It was the briefest sound of horror, extinguishing only a half moment after the halt of his footsteps. The sun pouring through the window seemed to be wrestling even more futilely with the dark of the kitchen, which pushed its rays backwards, pushed them up from the counters and the floor back towards the glass pane, leaving the room lightless, leaving me standing before nothing but a black doorway. I blubbered. Dale? Jem? There came no response from the unfathomably cold space, but the darkness started to lift a few seconds later, as if the room had simply been cleansing itself, wiping away something, washing its secrets out to sea with a tidal shade. As I took tentative steps forwards, I took my phone out of my pocket. I had to record it, had to know whatever was happening in there. And as I stepped through that doorway, I found myself being spat back out into the lounge, memory having been wiped, leaving me unaware of whatever I'd just experienced. But I knew it had been something terrible, as I felt agony from the waist down. I looked below and saw red marks running up my bare calves and thighs towards the bottom of my skirt. I'd suffered first-degree burns. Hands trembling, I took out my phone and loaded the video I'd recorded whilst in the room. It was only 20 seconds long. There was no video footage. Both the image and the audio were distorted. Something had interfered with my phone, but I saw it. An opening in the wall, a black hole, leading to a cramped pit of mud and rocks that looked far from earthly. And emerging from the shadows were two disembodied sets of hands, clawing into the dirt, desperately trying to drag themselves free. I heard the garbled sounds of my two friends pleading meekly for help, heard distorted robotic breathing, heard the low-quality sound of my own scream as those two sets of hands were dragged back into the shadows, plowing lines in the dirt with their nails, and then came two burning, murky oranges in the black, two dots, neatly aside one another, eyes. I dropped my phone in terror and spun to face the doorway to the kitchen. Heavy panting came from within. It was that unmistakable breathing from the video. No longer distorted. No longer a recording. A fiction tucked neatly behind a phone screen. No longer a forgotten memory. It was coming from the room before me, and I wasn't forgetting. Then came the crunching, thudding sounds of something landing against the kitchen floor. Something so weighty that it was cracking the tiles. In terror, I screeched and fled. That too was 12 hours ago, and I ran straight to my parents' house. I don't have a plan. I won't tell them why I've run from home. Won't tell them why I've asked to keep the kitchen door closed. Someone keeps texting me, hide and seek. I wish I hadn't ignored it. I received the first message 3 days ago. I was on my break at work, and I got a text notification. It was odd. It was from an unknown number. Normally I ignored those sorts of messages. Spammers and the like usually showed up with those types of auto texts. But this one was different. It was so strange because no number showed up at all. Just the message, hide and seek. I thought someone might have the wrong number for a friend they were trying to get in touch with to play a game, apparently. So I responded, think you have the wrong number. Not sure who you are trying to reach, but they are not here. I went about the rest of my workday and was just wrapping things up. When I pulled my phone from my bag, I saw I had another text waiting for me, same number or lack of number. It was just another blank line where a number should display and the message, hide and seek. I was confused and slightly annoyed, so I responded again. Like I said before, I think you have the wrong number. Who is this? Who are you trying to get a hold of to play hide and seek? I waited, staring at the screen for a minute, and I was about to put it away when I saw a response. You hide and seek? My patience had reached its limit, and I figured if they would not answer, then I would just block the non-existent number and hope it would work. Despite the lack of a visible number, the option on the message thread still presented itself, so I was relieved when the weird conversation vanished. I got in my car and started to drive home. I got another notification as I got on the road and used my car's text-to-speech to read it to me. It was Mike, my roommate. He was asking me to pick up more beer from the store since he had apparently finished off what we had left. I groaned at the message and the fact that I was always the one to buy it for us. It was getting old, but I needed a drink after the night I had, so I sent him a message back saying, I can this time, but if you are going to keep drinking everything we have, then you better start paying for it. I stopped by a nearby gas station close to our apartment and grabbed a case of Miller and continued home. As soon as I got back in the car, I received another text. I was getting annoyed already since I figured it was Mike complaining about being out of something else. But instead, as the text-to-speech read out the message, I knew it was something else. Seek, drink? It made sense now, and I immediately called Mike. He answered after several rings and sounded stoned. Hey man, what's up? Did you grab the beer? Yeah, I did. Are you messing with me? How are you sending those messages? When I call you, I can see your number, but not when you sent that weird text. What kind of app are you using? Also, what is the point? I am not home yet. I can't play hide and seek. Never mind that I'm not 5 years old. The seek drink thing was a bit of a giveaway for whatever weird game you were playing. There was a brief pause and he responded, Not sure what you mean, man. I didn't send anything like that. Weird. Who wants to play hide and seek? Anyway, get home, man. My buzz is fading. He hung up on me and I was even more confused. If he had not sent the message, who did? I drove home feeling a little on edge. When I got back inside, Mike greeted me at the door. Of course, by greeted, I mean he took the case of beer and walked to the fridge, removed two, and sat back down on the couch. Nice to see you too, I mumbled under my breath. I wanted to ask again about the weird message, but I just shrugged and grabbed a drink for myself and lumbered to my room. I was tired, so I decided to call it an early night. When I stepped into my room, my phone buzzed, and I saw another text. From no number, almost gone time, hide, or manosik. I was getting creeped out at that point. I did not know how the messages kept getting through after blocking it. I decided to respond again. Stop messaging me. I do not know who this is, and I do not want to play. Leave me alone. I hit send and tried blocking it again. This time I turned my phone off for good measure. I tried to settle down and just go to sleep. I managed to nod off for a bit, but after a while I heard a knock at my door. I jolted up and heard the slurring voice of Mike. Hey man, I don't know what the hell, but I think someone is trying to get a hold of you. I just got a trippy message and it sounded like what you were talking about earlier. Check it out. I rushed to the door and saw Mike looking at his phone in a confused stupor. I grabbed it from him and looked at the message. Last chance, hide, or seek? My heart sank and I felt a wave of panic rising in my chest. I asked Mike, when did you get this? He shrugged his shoulders. A while ago, man. I don't remember exactly. I was not looking at my phone. What's going on? I stepped back into my room and turned my own phone back on. Sure enough, I had a missed message, okay? You hide. I stared at the words in mounting fear. I had no idea what to do, but I felt suddenly exposed. I considered calling the police, but I did not know what I would tell them. Nothing had happened, only a creepy text thread. Yet something felt wrong, like something bad was about to happen. I looked over at Mike and he looked confused and a bit paranoid as well. Before I could try and explain things, the lights went out. At first I thought it might be a power outage. Then I heard the slow creaking sound of the front door opening, despite being sure I had locked it when I got home. Terror gripped me, and I knew something was very wrong. I crouched down in the dark and whispered to Mike the only thing I could think to say, hide. I crawled on my floor and under my bed. I was about to call 911 when my phone suddenly died as well. It was on one moment and then just lost power, despite having over half a charge left. I put the useless device in my pocket and tried to see if there was anything I could use as a light source. I froze and thought better about moving when I heard a strange shuffling sound, then heavy footsteps much heavier than Mike's. I noticed the temperature in the room had dropped suddenly and it felt like it was freezing. As the footsteps resounded and moved closer, I smelled a fetid tinge in the air as well, like something rotten. I crawled as far back and huddled up as small as I could make myself under the bed and held my breath. I heard my closet door gently shutting and thought it might be Mike hiding in there. Then the heavy footsteps picked up the pace. I suddenly realized if I could hear the door closing, whatever the hell was in here with us could hear it too. I considered calling out to Mike to move, but fear froze my voice. The heavy footsteps were in the room now. Despite my efforts to try and see what stalked us, I could not make anything out. I sat there, silent and immobile, holding my breath and waiting. After several long moments, I thought we might be safe. Then I heard the door to the closet break and shatter. Then Mike screamed, a haunting and nightmare-inducing shriek. Something had found him. The cry of terror was suddenly silenced. I did not hear anything violent, just the scream and then utter silence. I had no idea what the hell had just happened. For a long while I sat there paralyzed with fear until finally the light came back on. When I summoned the courage to creep out from under the bed and see what had happened, I was shocked when laying on the ground was the shattered remains of my closet door. Despite the ruin of the door, there were no traces of anyone or anything else. Mike had vanished. I slowly called out louder and more emboldened as I moved into the hall where the light was on again. No one responded. No one else was there. I stumbled through the apartment searching for my roommate, but he was gone. Worse still, I had no idea just where the hell he had gone. No trace of Mike has shown up in the last couple days since it happened. I don't know if anything will. I think he can finally be declared missing, but I don't know if it will do any good. It was impossible. But whatever had broken into our place had found him, and now he was missing. He had lost hide and seek, and that thing, whatever it was, took him away. The entire nightmare is unbelievable. Yet even now, as I write about my friend's impossible disappearance, I am shocked when I receive another text, hide and seek. I don't know what to do. I don't know what this is. Maybe I should respond again, a different way this time. Maybe it might help, might keep me safe from whatever or whoever is doing this. Perhaps I can find out. My reply is one word: seek. I went cave exploring with my friend. We found something that wasn't supposed to be there. I don't want sympathy. I just want someone to tell me I'm not crazy. I've run through every explanation: exhaustion, hallucination, gas exposure, but nothing adds up. I know what I saw in that cave. I know what we heard, and more importantly, what we felt. You can say I'm mistaken. That's fine. Just don't tell me it wasn't real. It was my friend Zoe's idea. She's always had a reckless streak, urban exploring, Off-trail hiking, night diving. I usually talk her down, but this time, I don't know. Something about the way she described the cave made me curious. It's not even on any of the maps, she'd said. A guy on the geology forum posted coordinates before his account went dead. Said the wind didn't blow the same down there. I should have said no. We left early. Just 2 backpacks, headlamps, spare batteries, and a rope line. No cell signal where we were going. The cave entrance was narrow, more of a seam in the rock than a mouth. You had to slide in sideways between slabs of limestone to even reach the chamber. The inside was colder than it should have been. Still air, like nothing moved in or out. Zoe made a joke about ancient burial grounds. I didn't laugh. There was a dampness to the walls, like sweat, not moisture. The rock was wrong too. It looked like it had been scored with something. Thin, deep gouges, inconsistent in pattern. Not pickaxe marks, not natural erosion. It looked deliberate. We went deeper. The light from the surface was long gone, and all we had was the thin, white cone of our headlamps. The passage narrowed, then opened into a wide chamber. I remember thinking the ceiling looked too high for how far we'd gone down. Like we were standing in a space that shouldn't exist. Zoe moved ahead of me, scanning the walls. That's when we found it. A bundle of bones tied with what looked like human hair, hanging from the ceiling by a crude length of sinew. No carvings. No symbols, just a mass of bones gently swaying. I whispered, "Zoe, I don't think this is abandoned." She didn't respond right away. When she finally did, her voice was hollow. "This wasn't here in the photos." Photos? She hadn't mentioned any pictures before. I didn't ask. I was too focused on the smell that was suddenly thick in the air, like meat left in the sun, but sweeter. That's when I heard it. Something scraping stone. Not close. Not far. Somewhere in that massive, impossible chamber with us. I turned, and for a second I thought I saw something move. Long and thin, almost like a shadow peeled away from the wall and slipped out of sight. Zoe was already backing up. Her face had gone pale beneath the headlamp's glow. I grabbed her arm and whispered, "We need to go. Now." She didn't argue. We turned, retraced our steps, but the tunnel didn't look the same. The gouges in the walls were deeper now. Fresher, some still wet. Zoe started muttering under her breath. I counted the turns, I swear I did. I told her to keep moving, keep the rope line in hand, but when I reached for it, there was nothing. The rope was gone, just a frayed end, cut clean. Something had taken it, and it wasn't done with us yet. Zoe was unraveling. Her breaths were fast and shallow, fogging up the inside of her headlamp lens. I grabbed her by the shoulders, more to steady myself than her. "Hey," I said quietly but firmly. "We need to keep our heads. You counted the turns, right? So think. What's next?" She shook her head, eyes wide. "I don't know. I did count them, I swear. 3 right, 2 left, slope downward. But this isn't where we came in." I glanced around. The stone felt tighter somehow. Angrier. The air had thickened, like the cave was exhaling slowly and we were breathing in its rot. That smell was stronger now. Clotted. Sickly sweet. I listened. There, beneath Zoe's frantic breathing. Breathing. Not hers, not mine. Something deep. Rhythmic. A slow drag in and out, not from any one direction. Just around us. Embedded in the walls. Or beneath them. I shushed her and held my hand out. She went quiet. We both heard it then. Not a growl. Not a snarl. Just breath. Like lungs the size of the room, expanding in time with our fear. I scanned the area. "There. Look," I whispered. About 10 feet up, there was a narrow ledge. Natural rock, slanted inward like a lip above the tunnel mouth. If we could get up there, maybe we'd get a better view of the layout. Or at least feel like we weren't being watched from every direction. I helped Zoe climb first, boosting her from below. Her boots scraped and kicked loose gravel, and I winced with every sound. My turn was harder. My fingers trembled against the sharp stone, my legs aching from tension and cold, but I made it. The ledge was wide enough for us to crouch. Our lights reached further up here, that's when I saw it. A shape just outside the cone of our beams. It was too tall. That was my first thought. Not like a person. Like someone had been stretched upright, arms long, joints sharp, body so thin, you could see where the ribs nearly pierced the skin. Its back was turned. Pale, scabbed flesh stretched tight over its frame. Its head scraped the ceiling, and it was listening. One long arm curled out and touched the wall, claw tips dragging. across it gently like it was feeling vibrations through the stone. My breath caught. It froze. No sound. No movement. Then its head twisted, not turned, twisted, the neck bending like a broken branch until one sunken pupil-less socket faced our direction. It didn't blink. It didn't move. Zoe made a noise, something between a whimper and a choked breath, and I grabbed her mouth just in time. The thing tilted its head, its other hand flexed. Claws like carved antler tips scraped together, click, click, click. Then it sank back into the dark. Not walking. Melting. The way it moved made me feel wrong inside. Like gravity didn't apply to it the same way. I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted salt. We sat there for what felt like an hour. Maybe it was minutes. Time felt fake, down there. Zoe finally leaned in. Her voice was so quiet I barely heard her. I don't think we found the cave. I think it wanted us to find it. That thought didn't feel paranoid. It felt true. The walls were grooved. The air was still. The bones were arranged. This wasn't some forgotten tunnel. It was a trap, baited with something only the desperate or curious would follow. I pulled out the backup flashlight and checked our gear. Still had a flare, half a bottle of water, no rope, one knife. We couldn't stay up here. Whatever that thing was, it knew now. We had to move. I started to climb back down when I saw something strange in the rock below. Thin lines in the stone that looked too symmetrical, almost like script. Not in English, not anything I recognized. Dozens of little carvings etched into the ledge just below where we sat. Each one a perfect copy of the last. Zoe saw them too. That looks like the markings near the... She stopped herself, near the bone bundle. We both knew it. Below us, the breathing started again, but this time it wasn't steady. It was excited. I told Zoe to stay. Don't move. Don't make noise. Don't shine your light unless you hear me call for you. She didn't argue, just nodded with that hollow, hunted look. Her hands gripped the rock until her knuckles went white. I climbed down from the ledge and slipped into the corridor on the far side. One we hadn't seen before. It felt older than the rest. The walls here were darker, like the stone itself had been scorched, not from fire, from time, or something older than time. My boots crunched something brittle beneath them. I didn't look down. The deeper I moved, the warmer it got. Not physically. That's not the right word. It was like the space remembered heat, a stale, decaying warmth that stuck to your skin like grease. I turned a corner and found another chamber. This one was smaller, oval-shaped. The walls weren't stone anymore, at least not naturally. They were carved into reliefs, figures I didn't recognize arranged in circles, each with their heads bent toward the center. In the middle of the room was a pit. I don't know how deep it went. My light couldn't reach the bottom, but I could hear it. Something moving down there. Slow, wet, rhythmic. It didn't echo. I backed out before whatever was down there noticed me. When I returned to the ledge, Zoe was gone. No blood, no drag, marks. No scuffle, just gone. Except there was a new bone bundle, hanging from the rock just below where we had been sitting. Fresh, not skeletal, not cleaned. Something wet still clung to the twine holding it together. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I couldn't. My body locked up. My mind flooded with one thought that repeated over and over. It took her. My flashlight flickered. Not out. Just dimmed. The way a dying memory does in the back of your mind when something older pushes forward. I ran. I don't remember the path I took, only that the cave shifted around me. The same hallway split and doubled back. I saw my own footprints over and over again, and then I didn't. There were no footprints, no dust, just smooth stone, as if nothing and no one had ever walked there before. When I finally collapsed, I was staring up at a patch of sky. Pale morning light filtered through a hole barely large enough to crawl through. Roots hung like fingers. I pulled myself out with everything I had left. I don't remember how I got back to the car, or how I drove. I woke up in my apartment too, days later, dehydrated and covered in scrapes. Zoe's things were still in the trunk. She's never been reported missing. No records, no digital footprint. It's like she was erased the moment we stepped into that place. Except, yesterday, someone slid something under my door. A strip of pale leather, tied around a bundle of hair. Zoe's. I recognized the braid. There were markings burned into the leather. Same as the carvings in that cave. I've spent hours trying to match them to anything. Runic scripts, tribal symbology, ancient languages. Nothing matches exactly, but one symbol keeps showing up. It looks like a figure bent backward over a ring of thorns. Sometimes it's drawn with antlers. Sometimes it has no face. Sometimes it looks like it's smiling. I'm not posting this for clout. I don't care if anyone believes me. I'm posting it because I found something else burned into the inside of the leather. Not in ancient script. In English. 5 words. You were meant to watch. I haven't slept since. And I'm not sure I should. Because sometimes just before dawn I hear breathing in the walls.